fuck? Alright, let's go live.
Putting something bad out into the universe if everybody's trying to kill you all the time. But anyway, not to victim blame, but it was the third assassination attempt at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Seems to be another resistance liberal nut job. School teacher from California. He appears to be black or partially black. He booked a room at the Washington Hilton where the White House Correspondents' Dinner was being held. And funnily enough, he checked into his hotel room with a shotgun, a handgun, and a knife the day before the dinner. So think of it. The Washington Hilton is hosting the White House Correspondents' Dinner with President Trump, Vice President Vance, FBI Director Kash Patel, HHS Secretary RFK Jr., Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War. The whole government is in attendance the following day. By the way, we're in the middle of a war with Iran, whose supreme leader declared a fatwa to kill everybody before he was martyred. Trump himself, there's been 2 assassination attempts against him so far. And the day before this momentous occasion, some random person was able to check into a hotel room with a shotgun and a handgun and a knife in his bag. How is this possible? How does this even happen? And he says that. He said in his manifesto, he said, I'm surprised they just let me check in. I mean, could you imagine, and I don't want to sound, maybe this is going to sound a certain way, but imagine that. Imagine you get on a train and you're thinking, I'm going to unalive the government in Minecraft tomorrow. You got a bag with a shotgun. You go to the hotel. You're like, hi, I'm here to check in. My name's Nick Fuentes. Here's my license and credit card. What's going through your head? You're thinking are there going to be x-ray scanners? Is there going to be any kind of security protocol here? He gets up to his hotel room. He's probably thinking, how did I make it this far? And so this is how it starts. Following night, the dinner starts, and Trump, I believe, is on the first floor. On the second floor is where the check-in is for the event. The shooter bum rushes the security checkpoint and starts blasting with his shotgun. Secret Service returns fire. He falls to the ground, although it's not clear that he was shot. Maybe he fell. They apprehended him, and that was that. Nobody was hurt. One police officer was shot, apparently by the shooter. It isn't clear, actually, if the police officer was shot by Secret Service or another police officer, or if it was the would-be assassin, but he was hit in his bulletproof vest and recovered later the same night. So he appears to be fine. Guy was apprehended. He did publish a manifesto. The manifesto is, they just keep getting worse. The manifesto says something like, surprise to all my friends and family, but no, I wasn't on a break. I was trying to kill the president. And he basically says Trump is a pedophile and a rapist and a murderer, and he's going to kill him for all those reasons. And it's about what you would expect. And it's a big nothing burger, I suppose.
Yeah, his manifest was kind of weird, but what else did you expect? This man who did this is crazy. All these people who do these kind of things, they're lunatics. Otherwise you would not do this, but I can understand a little bit where he is coming from. And again, I'm not trying to defend this guy, of course not. He is crazy, again, he is nuts, otherwise you would not do these kind of things. So I'm not trying to defend him. But Trump should also ask himself at this point, how is it possible that I'm in office for 1.5 year time and there were almost already 3 people who tried to assassinate me? How is it possible that so many people become so mad about our president? Maybe because Trump is, for example, responsible for covering up the Epstein files. Maybe because Trump is starting wars and he campaigned with no more wars. Again, that doesn't give you the right to assassinate him. Of course not. Violence is never ever a solution. Let me make this very clear. But Trump should also ask himself, weird, this never happened to Biden, and I'm in office now almost 2 years, and 3 people tried to assassinate me already. Maybe I'm doing some things what is not okay, what the people don't like. Again, I'm just saying, But Trump, isn't it kind of weird that this happened almost 3 times with him?
Now, this is a story. We're going to read through it just briefly. This is from the New York Times, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. Just going to go over some of the details here. It says, Allen, 31, of Torrance, California, came to the nation's capital with the intention of carrying out a political assassination. He brought a pump-action shotgun, a .38 caliber handgun, and 3 knives. In a federal affidavit unsealed on Monday, an FBI agent said that around 8:40 p.m. on Saturday, Mr. Allen approached a security checkpoint inside the hotel where Mr. Trump, Vice President Vance, and members of the cabinet were attending the dinner in the ballroom 1 floor below. Mr. Allen ran through a magnetometer holding a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, and Secret Service agents heard a loud gunshot. One agent was shot in the chest but was wearing a bulletproof vest. At a news conference after Mr. Allen's court appearance, the Attorney General said that the injured agent drew his gun and fired 5 times at Mr. Allen, who fell to the ground and was arrested. Mr. Allen was not shot and had only minor injuries. In addition to the shotgun, Mr. Allen was also in possession of a .38 caliber pistol at the time of the arrest. The sound of gunfire outside the ballroom led to a security lockdown as guests in tuxedos and ball gowns crouched under their tables. Mr. Trump and members of his administration were rushed out of the ballroom unharmed. Shortly before the attack, Mr. Allen sent an email to his family and a former employer in which he expressed anger at the administration and the president. Administration officials were the suspect's targets, apparently prioritized from highest ranking to lowest, according to a copy of the roughly 1,000-word document shared by 2 law enforcement officials not authorized to disclose the information. So this is what happened, and I said this at the beginning of the show, and I said this on Twitter. I don't know what it is about this, but I really just don't care. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. I saw other people say basically the same thing, but as the details have come out, and I really just don't have any kind of, I don't have a take. I don't really have much to say. Well, we've heard all the takes, I think, that there really are about this. This is a left-wing person who was radicalized, obviously. Motivation was to kill the president, radicalized by anti-government sentiment.
Hey, one person walking in.
This is a guy that just went postal. This is some lunatic that just went crazy. And you're seeing more and more of that. I don't know what that is exactly, if that is social isolation. Maybe AI is playing a role in that. There's no indication of that, but I feel like that's increasing psychosis lately. A lot of drug use lately. I feel like there's a lot of trends underlying, or maybe they're kind of undercurrents happening beneath society, which are causing a lot of people to lose their minds. However, I don't think there's anything that interesting really to say about this other than that. Left-wing person radicalized against the government. I would add, if there's anything else to say, it's another case of the Secret Service being completely incompetent. How is this even possible? I think that's really almost the only thing that you can say about this specific incident is how is it even possible? Like I said, think about the situation that we are in. We are in a state of war. And it is true that the Ayatollah of Iran declared a fatwa against the United States and called on all the martyrs and all the believers to attack the United States, which makes this a high-risk environment. It's also true that the president has been told, and law enforcement and intelligence agencies have also said, that potentially Trump was being targeted by Iran from the beginning. I think that's Israeli propaganda. However, this is something that our own intel law enforcement agencies have independently said. So you think about the situation, we're at war. The Ayatollah has called on his supporters to attack us. Law enforcement and the intelligence community have said there's an active Iranian threat against the president, whether you believe that or not. They have said that in the past for years. And yet somehow somebody was able to check into the hotel where the entire cabinet would be, not just the president, with 2 loaded guns and 3 knives. And he wasn't apprehended until he, bum rushed the escalator to actually break into the room? How is that even possible? And you have to ask yourself, what if he had a bomb?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what if he had a bomb? And I still have so many questions until today, because I don't know if you guys have seen like this footage of like the Secret Service. First they took JD Vance, and maybe like 10, 15 seconds later they took Trump. Why did they do that? And as well, I have read online, and again, I have to make this very clear, I'm not saying this is true or anything, but I saw some people suggesting that maybe this was a setup. Maybe this was a setup, because we all know what happened after Butler, Pennsylvania, when Trump got shot. Many people voted for him. Many people supported him. Like, he became so popular after that. Now we know that almost no one supports Trump anymore. No one likes him anymore. He's responsible for this by himself, by covering up the Epstein files, for example, by like starting these wars. Meanwhile, he campaigned with no more wars and I'm gonna be more transparent. But maybe he can also, like, this can work in favor of him, that more people will support him now again. So it could be the case that he is using these kind of incidents in favor of himself. But I have to make this very clear. Of course, some people are suggesting this. That doesn't mean that this is actually true. I think, in my opinion, it would be actually ridiculous if like our whole government would do this, if they would allow this. I think it's almost not possible, but it is a fact. We saw what happened after Butler, Pennsylvania. We saw what happened. He won the elections because of that, with this fight. You remember? So he knows that no one supports him anymore now, so maybe he needs something like this in favor of himself. But again, I'm not saying that's true. Some people are just suggesting this. It could also be a false flag. Of course, it could be a false flag, that they're like, exactly what Nick just said, that they are like, that's another country, maybe the same country where we're also fighting the war now with, that they just tried to like put this on Iran. No, this guy was like pro-Iran, so we have to bomb them again. That could also be the case. I still have so many questions, but I'm scared that we will never ever really find out what happened here, because that always happens with these kind of incidents. We never know what really happened. But again, I have so many questions still. Also, like exactly what Nick said. How is it possible that this guy could check in the same hotel with multiple guns, with knives? I have so many questions. It almost feels like a false flag, or maybe like some setup. But again, I'm not sure about it. But I don't know. Something doesn't feel right in the, like, with this whole incident, in my opinion.
What if he had a pipe bomb in his suitcase instead of a loaded gun? What if he had some kind of a device, whether that's a nail bomb or a dirty bomb or who knows, a chemical agent? If this was a more sophisticated attacker, this could have been a catastrophe. This would have been a mass casualty event. You're not talking about just potentially wiping out half the cabinet, including the president and vice president, but also all these people in attendance. And what would we be saying at this point if it was some kind of a suicide bomber? Again, if it was anything even a little bit more sophisticated than a couple of close-range firearms and some knives, and some knucklehead idiot who thought he was just going to literally bum rush the checkpoint, it'd be a very different story. How is this possible? Especially, how is it possible, again, even the situation with Iran and everything else notwithstanding, how is it possible after there have already been 2 assassination attempts against the president? It doesn't bode well. And it raises some interesting questions. This is where people get a little bit conspiratorial. And this now always accompanies everything that happens, everything like this, or even anything not like this that happens. People naturally start to ask, is this even real? Who is this person? Is it really Secret Service incompetence? Is it that simple? Because if it is, that's pretty disturbing. And I'm not even sure which is more disturbing. Or is it something else? Was there another stand-down order? Is it the case that the president just doesn't have an active security detail right now? Who knows why that would be? Is there some entity seeking regime change? Maybe some entity that would be pleased to see the president get attacked? Is that perhaps why the event was not secured? Is there a deliberate stand-down? And honestly, you don't know. There's no way to know. And it's hard to say, because on the one hand, you'd have to say Secret Service is completely out to lunch. And, you know, whether they're trying not to protect the president or they're not trying to not protect the president, well, they're not. They're not doing their job. And so the only question is whether that's an intentional stand-down on behalf of some kind of incomprehensibly complex, shadowy government force, or it's just sheer incompetence. But to me, these are really the only things that can be said about the actual event. Here is, to me, the bigger picture about this, and this is what really makes me sick to my stomach. So You know, we could go down all these different avenues, and to me, that's really not interesting. You can talk about the left has radicalized people against the government, and you could say Secret Service is incompetent, and you could say it's a conspiracy. They wanted Trump to go. They're sending a message. Time travel is a factor, apparently, if you know what I'm talking about. There's a time travel element that people are talking about to this one as well. We could go down all those different avenues. To me, that's not particularly interesting. I would say, and maybe this is a good segue, let's say, for example, people like to talk about the radicalization against the president. I don't actually think that's even valid anymore, because the president himself is celebrating when people die. So how does that work? And I know that two wrongs don't make a right, and I know that doesn't rationalize or justify or make acceptable murder or an assassination, especially of the nation's leader. But you think about the kind of guy that Trump has become. He wasn't always like this. Maybe there were shades of this that had broken through. Maybe aspects of his personality shined through and surfaced at one time or another. But you have to admit, Trump is totally unhinged now. And he's a completely different person. And now I would say he's just downright wicked. He's a downright wicked and evil leader. So, for example, when Robert Mueller dies, Trump is literally celebrating on Truth Social and saying, I'm glad he's dead. It's good news that this person has died because he was a terrible person. I don't know that I believe in karma, but I do believe that there are such a thing as cause and effect. And I'm not going to say that Trump saying that made a crazy person want to kill him. However, you do realize that there's a bit of a double standard. You can't defend every single thing that Trump says like that when Robert Reiner's kid killed his parents in a horrific, brutal, double homicide, murder-suicide, and Trump says, well, he hated Trump, he didn't like Trump, so that's funny. When Robert Mueller dies and Trump celebrates, when he compares himself to Jesus, when he says he's going to annihilate Persian civilization, can you really then turn around and say, it's the left, it's everybody else that has made the rhetoric so toxic?
No, you can't. Of course not. But it is Trump. Like, what else did you expect? He's always blaming other people for his own mistakes. He's pointing his finger to the Democrats, to the left, to the fake news. He always does this. We're almost used to this now. But he should look to himself. He should point the finger to himself for one time. Because he should ask himself, how is it possible that he's not even 2 years in office, and almost 3 people tried to assassinate him already? And again, I'm not trying to defend these kind of people who did this. They are crazy, they are lunatics. Violence is never ever an option. Let me make this very clear. Of course, if you disagree with someone, you're not going to do this. But he should ask himself, how is it possible that this happened with me now, that 3 people tried to assassinate me already, and with 4 years of Biden, nothing like this happened? He should just ask himself this question, because somehow he is making people so mad that some people really want to do this kind of things. Because I don't have to explain you, we live in a big country, so of course you will have some crazy people left. They have nothing to lose. They have nothing to lose. And if you make them so mad like Trump is doing, then you have some people who will do these kind of things. But again, I'm not trying to say that what they do, they are crazy, they are wrong. Of course, you should never ever think that you have the right to like assassinate the president of the most powerful country in the world. Not any person at all if you disagree with him. But Trump should ask himself, how is it possible that I make people so mad, or that people hate me that much that they want to do these kind of things? Because we can all agree with the fact that not many people support Trump anymore. People are so tired by him because he always betrayed us. He promises many different things. And this guy, it looks like where he was talking about is a manifest. I think this has something to do with the Epstein files. And Trump covered up the Epstein files. He is kind of responsible for that. He's still withholding many of these files. So he shouldn't be surprised that you make some people so mad that they want to do these kind of things if you are covering up the Epstein files, if you are defending your powerful friends who were in the Epstein files because you didn't want to release them. So yeah, then you have some people who will be very mad and maybe do this kind of things, but again, it doesn't give you the right to try to do this. This is not okay. Violence is never an option. But Trump, stop blaming other people. Try to look at yourself for one time.
You don't really have a leg to stand on anymore. You did. Maybe 10 years ago, there was a time There was a time when the left was absolutely powerful, and it was not symmetrical at all. There was no equivalency at all. And the left wanted us dead, and they were explicit about it, and right-wingers were pleading and begging for mercy and apologizing and just wanted to be understood. It's not really like that anymore, let's be honest. And so I can actually empathize with the left a little bit. It does ring hollow when Melania Trump and Erica Kirk go on Twitter and they want to bitch about the rhetoric. We need to turn the temperature down. Oh, it's gotten so crazy. Well, you know, look, it's kind of like you live by the sword, you die by the sword. You don't want to go on Twitter every day and say, I'm glad Robert Mueller is dead. I'm glad Robert Reiner got murdered by his son. We're going to annihilate Persian civilization. If you care about Epstein, I don't need your vote. You're an idiot. Like, if you're doing those kinds of things, and then the left calls you a horrible person and a monster, again, I'm not trying to rationalize that or justify that in any way. I don't believe murder is ever the solution. I'm a Christian. And I don't believe that two wrongs make a right. It doesn't justify, because it is true that the left, their rhetoric is violent, and they want me dead. They tried to kill me too. And they tried to kill Trump, and they killed Charlie Kirk. But in order to have the moral high ground, here's the rub. You can't go on Twitter then and say, oh, it's this rhetoric, we all need to relax and turn the temperature down. You can't really do that when you're a wicked person. You can't do that when you're reveling in the same kind of stuff. Now, more to the point, this is why I say this is a segue. So we're all supposed to believe that this is a horrible atrocity. We're all supposed to be so broken up about this. How long did it take after this incident that then all the pro-Trump influencers turned it into a social media campaign? This is what I noticed. Immediately after the assassination attempt, it was literally every pro-Trump influencer on Twitter clearly got the memo. And I don't mean that in a manner of speaking. I don't mean that as a figure of speech. I mean, they literally got a memorandum. They literally got the memo. They're in a group chat. They're employed by one of these agencies, and they got sent
welcome in,
the
guys.
talking
Hit
points
that like.
and then money. They were told, all right, pro-Trump influencers, here's our next social campaign for $300. If you could just post the following message, and the message was, this is why we need a White House ballroom. I'll read a sampling because it is so on the nose, it's so blatant, you can't even exaggerate it. Andrew Colvin from Turning Point USA writes, this is why President Trump needs to build the White House ballroom. Libs of TikTok says, this is why we need Trump's ballroom. Jack Posobiec, thank God President Trump is building a ballroom at the White House. See, so we switch that one around. Wall Street Maverick, we need the White House ballroom. Brylan Hollyhand, build the White House ballroom ASAP. Nick Adams, build the White House ballroom now. Randy Fine, we'd better never hear a peep from anyone complaining about a White House ballroom. All of those within hours of each other. That's not a coincidence. That's not like they all had the same idea. Do you know what that is? All of these people are being paid. Do you understand how this works? In the old days, politicians and corporations and foreign governments would engage lobbyists. They would pay specialists lots of money, and this is heavily regulated by the government, and there are disclosures, and there are rules, and there are monetary limits, and all kinds of things, and those lobbyists would use their connections in media, in government, among the political movers and shakers, and they would try to accomplish the goals of those political parties, corporations, and foreign governments. But with the advent and deregulation of social media, now lobbying takes a different form. And now foreign governments, corporations, and political parties and entities, now they just pay influencers. This is a real thing. This is not metaphor. This is how it works logistically. They pay influencers. They pay them hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars, sometimes more than that. It's completely unregulated. It's totally under the table, and it literally works like that. They say, we will pay you $3,000 if you post a TikTok, and here's the script. And the script has to say this, this, and this. They tell the influencers, make it your own. Say it in your own words, but we need this hashtag, and these are the points to emphasize, and these are the things that you have to say. You send us the TikTok. It's not even dependent on engagement. It's not dependent on how many people see it, like it, comment on it. It's just that they do it, and then they get the payout. That is what this is. So think of it. Some psycho goes to the White House ballroom to eliminate the entire government in the middle of a war after Trump has experienced 2 assassination attempts so far. His entire cabinet is in attendance. If this was a more sophisticated attacker, he would have wiped out the whole government and hundreds of other people. Would have been successful if not for his own incompetence, because Secret Service has either stood down because of a grand conspiracy or they're just not that competent. Within minutes of the assassination attempt, at the same time that we're being told this moralizing about the rhetoric from the left, and we have a problem, and people are doing another drive-by cry at the cameras about the horror, this is so sad. Within hours of the shooting, we get a social campaign about what? The White House ballroom.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what a joke. You could not make this up, right? And this is also the main reason why so many people, they still have so many questions and they just don't trust anything what happened at this incident, because it almost looks like a setup. It almost looks like they were just using this to campaign for that stupid ballroom. Are you kidding me? No one cares about this stupid ballroom, and they're worried about that. I don't give an F about this ballroom, to be honest. I wish this president or government and all those paid influencers were more busy with actual problems in our country. Maybe stop this war, because this administration campaigned with no more wars, and I don't know if they forgot about it, but we're still in a war with Iran. Why? Maybe stop that first and then care about your ballroom. What do you think about maybe releasing the rest of the Epstein files? We're also waiting for that. They're still trying to cover this up. Why? I also have so many questions about that. By the way, why is no one talking about the Epstein files anymore as well? What do you think about maybe like lowering the prices of like the gas prices, the grocery prices, make sure that, or healthcare is like more affordable, maybe to make sure that, or rent is like more affordable. We have so many real problems, and then they are busy with this nonsense with like the ballroom. No one cares about that. No one cares about that. But it just shows you. Now, by the way, all those paid influencers who were tweeting the same thing, because I'm happy that Nick points this out, because I also saw this on X, but it's all like, of course, like the usual suspects. I didn't expect anything else from them, but it literally showed us that they are just like paid, they're almost like paid agents for this administration. So in my opinion, you cannot even take these people serious anymore, because they just do what, as long as they get money, they will say whatever the government wants us to know. So that's actually kind of scary, and you should be aware of that. So of course, like, decide this for yourself. You're gonna believe all these influencers, but even like or favorite influencers, maybe also Nick, I don't know, could be the case with Nick as well. They're getting money to say some kind of things, and many people that just think that they can trust any influencer, that they can that they're like independent, they are not, and this is just another example. But about the ballroom, are you kidding me? That's like the latest problem we have here. But again, this is just my opinion. I'm very curious about your opinion. What do you think about this whole incident, what happened with Trump? Like, do you think it's real? Do you think, like, was there someone behind this, maybe another country or maybe another group? I'm very, very curious about your opinion. Please share your opinion in the comments. It's very important to say I read all comments. I even try to reply to some of your comments, so please let me know. As well, guys, if you like this video, please hit the like button. I would really appreciate it if you really like this